Hello and welcome to a very special podcast series. Forbes India presents The Green Billions Code. This podcast series is about sustainability and environment. I'm your host, Gaurav Chaudhary. Sustainability and the exhortation across the world will have to take on a new incarnation. It has to be embedded in the souls of every organization, business or otherwise. Businesses cannot flourish when lives are in danger because of environmental degradation. The industry too is squarely accountable, and growth models will have to be completely redefined. How are the conversations around environmental, social, and governance, or commonly described as ESG, going to impact the world economy, the Indian economy, and businesses in general? How about green hydrogen emerging as a scalable, efficient, and very cost-effective, viable alternative? And what about responsibilities and roles of individuals? Because we all keep on talking about companies' responsibilities and the government's responsibilities. But what about our own responsibilities? The Green Billions Code, presented by Forbes India, will touch upon all of these aspects in 6 focused episodes in conversation with global and Indian experts who are at the front line of ushering in this transformation. For the inaugural episode, I'm delighted to have Mr. Tony Abbott, former Australian Prime Minister and currently advisor, UK Board of Trade. Mr. Abbott brings in a lot of deep insight and perspective into the global debate on climate action. I'm also delighted to have Dr. Prateek Kanakia, founder and chairman of The Green Billions, a veteran corporate strategist and an entrepreneur for more than 1.5 decades now. Dr. Kanakia has been reimagining the world of sustainability. He has recognized hydrogen as a game changer in this journey. A very warm welcome, Mr. Abbott and Dr. Kanakia. Delighted to host you at the Green Billions Code.
Thanks a lot, Gaurav.
Mr. Abbott, first to you. It's very important to break down the path for global milestones. It essentially will require a coordinated, rule-based effort. Importantly, it would involve quickly and rapidly transiting into a clean energy ecosystem from the fossil fuel-based polluting fuels that are currently in use, because that is going to dramatically help in reducing the emission levels. Based on current evidence, where do you think we stand now and how is it panning out?
Obviously, we've got to reduce emissions as far and as fast as we can. But on the other hand, particularly in a country like India, we've got to lift people out of poverty and bring them into a much better level of life. And when you look around India, there are still tens of millions of people who don't have access to 24/7 electricity. So the challenge is to transition as quickly as possible to clean energy sources, while at the same time ensuring that we can get the lights on in countries like India, keep the lights on in countries like Australia. So one of the reasons why I'm quite excited by Dr. Kanakia's proposal to turn municipal waste into energy is because this is getting rid of what is a terrible environmental problem, and at the same time, it's producing 24/7 power.
That's right.
And I certainly believe, and India is showcasing this as it does so often, young entrepreneurs in particular are coming up with creative and innovative ideas to solve practical problems. And if we can, as Dr. Prateek is intending, turn the municipal waste from dozens and ultimately hundreds of Indian cities into 24/7 electricity, and at the same time manage the issue of toxins, which is not insignificant, that will be a real breakthrough for humanity.
Interesting about the point that you make about municipal waste and turning municipal waste into energy. I'll come to that in a moment. But Dr. Kanakia, plans and goals are one thing, and plans and goals are set by companies, plans and goals are set by the governments, and plans and goals are delineated by policies. Eventually, all of these will have to be, funneled down and driven down through governments, through companies, through urban cities, through municipalities, and finally, the responsibility lies with the individuals, with all of us. And that is something that is not really talked about. Can you break it down for us? What does it mean for, for individuals to be responsible in this climate change action plan for the world?
You're absolutely right, Gaurav. High time we pin down the responsibilities, the answerabilities, the accountability at an individual level. Mahatma Gandhi once said, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." My idea is to propagate my philosophy, which is to do with personal social responsibility. Enough of holding the corporates responsible and raising fingers at them. My vision is to see to it that everyone, every citizen of this world, the world is shrinking. We are becoming a global village. Everyone should contribute. Idea is to come together, collaborate, have a collaborative approach. Pin down the basics in life. While I say basics in life, we should inculcate habits since the time of kindergarten.
Yeah.
We should teach our children to see to it that they switch off lights in the house while it is not needed, as basic as that, or close the taps while it is not needed. So breaking down the responsibilities to an individual level would be the way forward to bring this whole transition. It is rare that a generation gets to witness transformational governance. While I say transformational governance, I mean the basic energy, the form of basic energy is changing, the form of currencies are being changing or being spoken about to change. I wish to see this change at the bottom of the pyramid level.
Absolutely. Very well said. And you raised a very important concept called personal social responsibility, PSR, as an attendant to CSR. If corporates, if the corporate social responsibilities are well defined and they're now being made accountable, I think individuals too should be made accountable. That's a very important point. But Mr. Abbott, again, back to you. And this time, we know about climate change and the noise around it and the conversations that are going on. But there's also a macroeconomic point of view, which is an aspect probably is a little underrated, but equally more important, is the fact that the old growth models it's time to redefine the old growth models, and probably I think the time of the old growth models is behind us now, because you cannot lease out acres and acres and acres of land and build factories. It'll serve the first growth objective, is to spin jobs and multiply income, but it'll come at the cost of massive ecological imbalance. Do you think it's about time to look at new growth models just to strike an equilibrium, which is so important between ecology and economic growth?
I think it's important to get the balance right. And it's easy for people in countries like Australia to talk about sustainable growth because we already have a high standard of living. And if we are imposing lower standards of living on countries like India because of our own environmental concerns, that's no good thing. There's a long way to go. But I also think that we should acknowledge how far we've come. For instance, when I was growing up in Sydney, Australia in the 1960s and 70s, on a clear day from a high vantage point, you'd look out across the city and there was a brown curtain of smog. Mm-hmm. This is in Sydney, not a noticeably polluted city at any time. Through all sorts of measures, particularly motor car exhaust emission controls, you don't have that brown curtain of smog anymore. We now have fish back in Sydney Harbour because of controls over the dumping of pollutants and things like that into our waterways. So we've come a long way at living better with Mother Nature. But at the end of the day, if you're a poor farmer or a poor factory worker in India, you want a better standard of living.
Right.
You want more money in your pocket. You want to be able to get a better education and better health services for your kids. And that does require wealth. So it's getting the balance right. And I think we have to be careful at conferences like Davos, assuming that everyone thinks like us and assuming that everyone has the same access to financial power and technological advances that we do. And again, this is where I get back to what Dr. Kanakia and TheGreenBillions are doing with municipal waste. This is a massive problem right around the world, particularly in India, with its 1.4 billion people growing fast. If we can turn those mountains of rubbish into something useful, and yes, recycling's a part of it, but not everything can be recycled.
Absolutely.
We've then got to take the stuff that can't be recycled and do something useful with it. And this is where the creativity of the young entrepreneurs of India is so important.
Mountains of rubbish, that's a very interesting phrase that you have said. And, I think to deal with that, the government recently approved the National Green Hydrogen Mission with an initial budget outlay of 19,744 crore. That's about $2.5 billion in current exchange rate. And this is being billed as something that probably has the potential to turn India into an export hub, an export and creation hub of green hydrogen for the world. While the potentials are quite well defined and promising, what are the challenges that you see, Dr. Kanakia, in this?
Gaurav, they say that the longest of the journey starts with the first step. And I really appreciate what the government has declared and done. They've taken the maiden step by declaring this kind of fiscal support for this policy called the National Green Hydrogen Mission. And to solve this overall problem of or to take this energy transition and adopt hydrogen in a longer term and make it viable, it'll still require a lot of support from the government.
Yeah.
We need a lot of, in fact, separate renewable banking, if we must say, or some kind of provisions for various viability gap fundings, because production of hydrogen is one thing. We still need to build upon the logistics, the storage, and look after other issues, the safety standards, we need to come up to the global safety standards which the world is maintaining. It's not as if production of hydrogen is a rocket science in our country or it's an alien concept.
Yeah.
It is imperative to note that major of the corporations have risen up to this challenge of making it happen, the cost of production, achieving it at a sustainable level. But yes, the journey is long. We've just started. It's just begun, and by just calling the hydrogen green doesn't make it viable. We need to achieve the cost efficiency, and the government needs to do its bit on a steady basis, and so will the newer technologies by the young minds will have to come and play.
Absolutely.
And make it sorted.
Yeah, Mr. Abbott, just to change tack a bit, there's also this aspect of market-linked instruments, say for instance, green taxes or tradable permits. And in theory and also in practice in some developed countries, this looks very elegant because it's created a flexible, efficient, effective system to keep carbon emissions under check. But having said that, there's a lot of resistance, particularly from developing countries. Do you think a one-size-fits-all kind of a market-linked instruments system can actually work, because there are trade-offs that have to be made between growth and environment concerns, and different countries are at different stages of development?
I think that's a very fair point you make. Personally, when I was in government, I preferred incentives to taxes. I've always rather encouraged people than punished people. And so the Abbott government replaced a carbon tax with what we called an emissions reduction fund, which was a $2 billion a year fund that would go to the market and seek bids for emissions reducing projects. Now, some of these were quite simple, like major buildings changing over their lights to more energy efficient lights. Some of them were farms, large farms, doing more carbon farming as opposed to using chemical fertilizers and so on. Sometimes it was additional tree planting that wouldn't otherwise have happened on suboptimal agricultural land. So there's a whole range of things that we can do. The important thing is that we are encouraging the creativity of our people. And as I said, my instinct is always that an incentive is better than a tax. Encouragement is better than punishment. But yes, if the government does have an objective in mind, It has to say, people, we want your ideas to bring this about, and we've got to find ways of trying to encourage them appropriately.
Absolutely. Incentives better than taxes, which brings me to the point on green hydrogen that Dr. Kanakia made previously. Green hydrogen is a costly proposition. It's not going to, you need to spend long periods of time trying to do the proofs of concept, and also huge amount of money is required for demonstrating the proof of concept before it is made scalable. What are the conditions how can we create the right conditions for catalyzing private investment in this sector? Because government, if you're talking about government support, that has to probably run for about 2 decades or so before it becomes scalable and profitable and commercially viable for the private sector. What needs to be done?
Gaurav, recently in COP27, Conference of Parties 27, which was held at Egypt, Government of India had raised this very valid question of they wanted to have clarification done on the definition of sustainable finance, the green finance, and they're talking about the Davos talked about some couple of trillions of dollars of this fund to funnel down to see to it that developing economies attain sustainability. Catalyst in this space will only be money.
That's right.
And we need to we need to facilitate, whether the governments, whether the international governments, institutional finances, all of them will have to come together and facilitate open-ended, long horizon funding models, funding mechanisms to see to it that we achieve the economy of scale. You need to understand that corporates, business houses, companies, for-profit organizations, they only work for their bottom lines.
That's right.
Just to give you perspective, whether the color being green or turquoise or blue or gray, the gross calorific value of hydrogen remains the same.
Absolutely.
So the color codification changing, the cost doesn't go down well. This concept doesn't go down well with the companies which are just concerned with their top lines and bottom lines.
Yes.
And a little difference in it, the manufacturing processes throughout the world are very cost sensitive. It all boils down to their balance sheets, and even if couple of cents are here and there, it makes a lot of difference. So they wouldn't adopt it for the sake of it. If we need to become an exporter of green hydrogen, if we need to spearhead this revolution, we need to facilitate a lot of sustainable finance. We need to have a lot of sustainable finance to achieve the economy of scale.
Absolutely, a global finance, and that is why probably in the G20, in the run-up to the G20 summit meeting this year, I think global climate finance has assumed such huge importance. But Mr. Abbott, I want to ask you about something which has gained currency, a lot of currency over the last decade and a half or so, which is the concept of circular economy. As a concept, it's not a new one, but it has really gained currency and momentum in the last 10 to 15 years, which seeks to replace the conventional linear value business model, which essentially means that you're focusing on cutting down waste, or rather reusing waste. But here's the thing. An estimated 100 billion tons of new products get into the global economy every year, and only about 10% of that is reused or recycled. How do we fix this?
Well, we aren't going to fix it overnight. And again, it will be best fixed if we encourage clever, creative people to come up with the best ways of doing it. This is where government can, I think, with targeted incentives, with research grants, etc., make a big difference. I wonder if I could just come back to the earlier discussion about green hydrogen. Now, it is in a sense the Holy Grail, using wind and solar power to produce hydrogen, which then can substitute for coal, gas, etc. There are a lot of issues, though. Obviously, these processes haven't been proven at scale. Then, of course, we've got the problems with the handling of the hydrogen, the transport of the hydrogen, the safe use of the hydrogen, given that it's a highly combustible material. There has been a lot of demand from businesses that government put up the money to do this.
Yeah.
Well, I'd feel a lot happier if some of the proponents of green hydrogen were putting some of their own money in as well. We've had a couple of our prominent entrepreneurs in Australia promote a big green hydrogen scheme in Western Australia, which obviously has extraordinary potential for solar, given the fact that it hardly ever rains in the West Australian desert. But they can't expect government to meet all the costs just so that they can reap all the profits. And
That's right.
I just think this is where it's all very well to come up with a wonderful idea, but you can't expect other people, particularly taxpayers, to constantly pay for it.
Absolutely. That's right. Dr. Kanakia, the final question to you is, you're doing a lot of work, TheGreenBillions is doing a lot of work on turning municipal waste into energy. But if you look at India, and from a macro point of view, India is going to probably remain among the fastest growing major economies over the next 15 to 20 years. That's because of the sheer momentum and the conditions that exist, the size of the population and the size of the domestic market too, which would mean that urbanization would both be a cause and effect of this growth expansion. We'll probably have far more cities coming up with more rapid, creation. Cities will come up in places that probably were villages 10 years earlier. What it does is that it creates, as Tony Abbott had previously mentioned, it creates mountains of municipal waste in the hinterland, which is now considered to be the hinterland. There's a potential too to turn these mountains of waste into energy. But are we ready for it?
Gaurav, one must understand that while we speak about our economy growing at a pace and a scale, our population equally is increasing, and God doesn't create land anymore. And if you've noticed the kind of development we've seen, the kind of transitions, urbanizations, the pattern of urbanization we've seen, that the rural areas are converting into semi-urban, and then semi-urban areas are now getting converted into aptly urban areas. The cost of real estate also is skyrocketing, and we cannot afford, the government cannot afford the kind of revenues the landfills, the mountains of such rubbish occupy, and other than the health issues and other repercussions that may follow, the government is losing a lot of healthy revenue by blocking these premium real estate to store store this mountains of rubbish. And none of us would want these kind of storages, these kind of mountains of rubbish popping up anywhere near to our houses or homes or villages. So we need to understand that achieving the zero waste facility, having sustainable technologies, monetizing them right, having right government support, and a thought process which is out of the box. All of this has to come together to solve this issues of municipal solid waste or treatment of this municipal solid waste.
Absolutely. Tony Abbott, and Dr. Prateek Kanakia, thank you so much for taking the time out and dropping by to have this conversation and sharing your deep insights on a variety of areas, including growth models, circular economy, individual social or personal social responsibility, and what needs to be done to make the world a better place to live in. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For this podcast.
Thanks.
Forbes India presents The Green Billions Code. Stay tuned for more.